So even though yesterday's video was super fun and a bunch of us speculated a bunch of different theories, a lot of people, however, brought up a very serious problem that is happening here in Canada, and it's called our housing crisis. And why do we have a housing crisis? Well, because a lot of LLCs and companies come in and buy out buildings and real estate and then don't actually have anybody living in them. So let's go through that. So from the numbers that I pulled, in Canada, about 30% of all of the real estate that is bought by LLCs. Let me show you. So this website shows you basically how many investors are buying up properties around Canada in different provinces, and it averages about 30% across the country. Now in 2020, over 40% of Ontario's condos were actually owned by investors. Now that 30% is actually quite a bit, because what happens is now we have infrastructure that can hold the amount of people that are coming into Canada and migrating to Canada, and also people moving out of their homes, children growing up, growing older, needing actual homes to live in. And what ends up happening is you end up flooding the market, which creates more of a demand than the supply that you have, which in turn creates inflation in the housing prices, which then in return creates issues with banking, and then the banking system has to come up and pretty much hold all the mortgage rates on a steady level. Now, I wanted to see who the number one LLC or corporation was that actually invests in Canada and buys up all of these units and condos. And surprise, surprise, the company's called Blackstone. Do they have anything to do with BlackRock? No, not really. And some of the singular investors in Blackstone are people like Gates or the Gates Foundation. But let me just show you this. So Blackstone is not only large in Canada for housing, multifamily rentals, and more, but they also buy out multiple condo units in and around the world. And here are some of the companies that actually put their assets into Blackstone, and they include Energy Transfer LP, Gates Industrial Corporation, First Energy Corp, and a bunch of other ones. There's also little ones like Google and other tech companies that have small investments in this company. Now, I know a lot of people will ask, well, how do we solve this? Do we get the government involved and get them to make, new laws? The thing is, the government has been putting in laws, but it only affects small flip people, like people that flip homes, and small on certain levels. And it also affects people who are just trying to buy their own first home. These corporations are so large and so powerful and have so much money that there is absolutely no law that they cannot find a loophole in order to actually push their agenda, which is to buy up these homes, leave them empty, because it is a form of money laundering and also hiding your assets in real estate, right? So I think this issue is a lot more complex than some people would like to think, and then also people believing that the government can solve it, when in fact the government is backed by these large corporations and they get their money from them. That is how politicians stay super rich, even though their paychecks don't really resemble the amount that they're worth. So we have a much larger and bigger issue at hand, and this would actually have to come in the form of where we punish corporations. And in order to do that, we'd have to have governments who aren't getting paid by them. But I want to know what you guys think and how hard it is in your area where you're at regarding finding rentals, mortgages, new houses, and so forth.